Thanks so much, Carolyn, and welcome everyone. I'm really looking forward to our conversation this morning. And we are going to focus in on workforce planning and how to ensure you know who you need and how to find them. So for those of you that aren't familiar, the Canadian Agriculture Human Resource Council is a national nonprofit. We're located in Ottawa, but we work across the country with partners such as the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture. We're really looking at identifying HR issues and helping address HR issues in agriculture. We do a lot of labor market research, as well as provide tools, templates, support, training around HR best practices. All the work that we do is led by industry stakeholders, like our partners, as I mentioned, with Nova Scotia Federation of Ag. So I grew up on my family farm in southwestern Ontario. I've worked in HR for over 20 years now. I do a lot of work around policy development, workplace culture, inclusion, diversity, leadership, and working with industry and with our partners to make sure that we have what we need for you guys as producers to have great HR management practices on the farm. And why is HR important, and why is that recruitment process and planning really important? I'm sure most of you feel this on a day-to-day basis, but there certainly is a labor shortage in the industry, and that labor shortage really isn't going to get any better. In fact, it's going to grow. So our labor market research on a national level shows us that that gap right now is around 63,000 jobs that are going unfilled. And over the next 10 years, that gap will grow to 123,000 nationally. That means that the industry is losing close to $3 billion in sales that aren't happening because there's not enough workers to work in the industry. And the vacancy rate is over 5%. And if you look at what that means from a productivity point of view, that output per worker is also increasing to by about 33% in a 10-year period, and that we see continuing. That puts a lot of strain on yourselves as producers and as your other workers that you have with you, because you're not able to find enough workers. When we look in Nova Scotia, certainly the same trend is happening. There's a shortage within Nova Scotia as well. Agriculture is growing, and the number of people working in the industry is growing from what our labor market information shows us. But with that labor shortage, that growth is being slowed down, and you're not able to reach the potential. If you see with about 33 million of sales lost just in your province due to these labor shortages. So having really strong HR best practices is going to help with attracting people to work for you and attracting people to work in the industry, as well as ensure that when you do attract people to work with you, that they're going to stay. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that importance of HR management. When you have good HR practices as an employer, you're going to attract skilled and the right people to work for you. You're going to have less people management issues, which can be very costly. Your turnover will be lower, so you're going to spend less time and money trying to find people and ramp them up and get them ready to work. It also helps you become that employer of choice in your community and in the industry. So good qualified people are really going to want to come and work with you because they know that it's a good place to work. It's also an important way to make sure you're meeting your legislative requirements and obligations. So you're reducing your risk from a legal point of view as well. And as I talked a little bit about, it does really help reduce that turnover. And there are costs to turnover. It's not just someone leaving your farm. You have costs in your time to manage the recruitment process, to bring someone up to speed, and to get them being back productive as the employee that you lost. There's also disruptions to client relationships, the reputation of your organization, And if you have a high turnover rate for those employees that are left, if there's a constant turn of new people coming and going, the employees that you do have are going to feel like, you know, that there's something going on. They won't be as settled, and it's not going to be really great for your morale. So investing in your operation, you invest in your operation in all other areas: equipment, outputs, inputs, risk management, all that kind of thing. It's really important that you bring human resources at the, you know, right into that list of things that are priorities for your business, because good HR practices are going to mitigate your risk, but they're also going to help your business be successful. So as I said, we're going to talk a little bit about how to know what you're looking for, and then how to find what you're looking for as far as hiring workers for the upcoming season. And these things can also be applied to full-time workers as well. So when we first talk about finding the right people, it's really important to take a step back and think about what you need. Even if you're planning for the season and not for full-time employment, you need to think about the work that needs to be done in the upcoming season. Think about the type of employees that you need to do that, and the different jobs that need to be in place to have the work done, and then what type of skills and experience and the number of people you need to fulfill the work for the season. So really that first step is strategic planning. And, you know, just like you would with your strategic, you know, this business plan, you're aligning your needs for hiring to the strategic goals and operational objectives. So looking again, like what you need to have done for the season and how you're going to get that done. Once you know that, then you're taking a look at what your HR needs are. What people do you have in place today? And do they have the right skills? Do you have enough people to do what you need to accomplish in the coming season? That leads you to that gap analysis where, you know, especially if you're ramping up for the season, you can identify where you're going to need to hire, where the gaps are, and where you know you already have someone in place, so you know you don't need to hire for that specific position. And then you're looking at the best practices to fill those gaps. So, you know, is it seasonal hiring? Is it full-time hiring? Is it a combination of both? These are things that you're going to think about as you're planning for the upcoming season. And then that HR plan is not something that is done one and done. It's really a living document where you need to be going back and taking a look at how it's working, taking a look at how it's meeting your operational needs, and, you know, making shifts to the plan as you go through the season, but also at the end of the season. How effective was it? Did you have the right people in place? What changes would you need to make for the next season? Should everything stay the same? That kind of thing. Also, another important part of that HR planning, and as we start going into finding the right people, job ads, interviews, all that kind of thing, did want to remind you about your legal requirements. As an employer, there are human rights legislation that you need to be aware of. And you should be aware of this legislation before you even start your hiring process. So the Government of Canada and all provinces and territories have human rights legislation. It does apply directly to how employers do things, right from your recruitment ads to your application forms, and all the way through to the hiring process and having employees be part of your team. So, you know, it is illegal to discriminate against someone based on age, and candidates of all ages make great workers. There's other things that you look at as far as you're not able to do. You have to ensure equal opportunities regardless of religion, age, gender, marital status, family status, mental or physical disability, pardon, conviction, or sexual orientation. So again, highly recommend that you're familiar with the Canadian Human Rights Act. prior to preparing any of your recruitment documents. In Nova Scotia, there's also the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. Again, a great resource for information on legislation specific to your province. Highly recommend as well that in addition to the federal legislation, that you're familiar with what is required within your own province. There is also a duty to accommodate, which does start really with that recruitment process. And through that, the legislation that's outlined through the Employment Standards Act as well, you're looking at that obligation to adjust an employment practice, environment, or schedule to accommodate individuals. And so there is a lot that goes behind that, but that accommodation could really relate to anything that's in the Human Rights Act or the Employment Equity Act. And so if you are required to make that accommodation, you can you look at it in a way that you're making the accommodation unless it would cause undue hardship to your business. And that undue hardship is defined by economic or efficiency costs. There are things that you want to consider and questions you want to ask yourself prior to saying that there is that you may not be able to provide the accommodation. These are things that would be asked of you should your decision be challenged through the courts or through legislation. So there's things around, is the cost part of the day-to-day operational costs? Is your business large enough? Can you spread it over budgets? Are there grants or subsidies that you could look at to make help offset that cost to accommodate? What are the capital expenditures required? Are there any tax savings or tax deductions? Will they offset the cost? What would be the result in that accommodation? Will it improve efficiency or productivity? And can you take a look at making that accommodation phased in over time, which may help you manage the cost as well. And so once you go through this, you will want to make sure that you've also thought about some of the questions that the commissions will consider around, your effort to look at the accommodation and provide alternatives or look at different ways to meet the individual's needs that are not discriminatory. So again, very highly recommended to familiarize yourself with this prior to starting your recruitment process and as part of your HR planning process. So once you're all prepared, you have your HR plan in place and you're ready to go, you're ready to start recruiting. So what is recruiting? It's really just going out there and looking for the right skilled workers for your business. And that recruitment process does start at first contact. So your reputation as an employer in your community and in the industry is very important. And for people that may not have had contact with your farm or your operation in the past, that impression that they receive is really on that first contact that they have with you. And that can really start with coming across the job ad that you have out there or hearing or your website if you're that large of an operation. And so a well-designed recruitment process is going to answer things that you've looked at through your HR planning process. What role am I looking for? What responsibilities and duties will the candidate have to do? What are the knowledge and skills that the candidate needs to have in order to be successful for themselves and for your business needs? And then how am I going to go about finding that best suited candidate and getting connected with the right people? So there are steps to recruitment, similar to that HR planning process. Highly recommend that you follow steps to prepare yourself for the recruitment process. That first step is really defining the job and developing that job description. Within that, you're going to develop the selection and hiring criteria as well. You'll create your job ad, which will be based on your job description that you've defined in step 1, but will not include that amount of detail. And then you're going to decide the best way to go out there and find people and get your job ad out there, and then you're going to be reviewing those job applications. So in that first step, it really is important to take some time to decipher what you need for the job, what are the knowledge, skills, and experience. If you're hiring seasonal workers or part-time workers, depending on the work that you need to have done, you may be, looking for someone that is willing to work and to learn. If you're hiring for a more seasoned position or management supervisory role or a technical role, clearly that knowledge and skills and experience are going to be more defined, and you'll have less ability to be flexible in that. But beyond just the knowledge and skills, it's really also good to think about what other softer skills or what other skills or personality do you need to fit in well with your work culture? Do you need someone that's a really good team player, or are they working more independently and need more problem-solving skills? Is it required that they have previous farm experience? As you see in the labor shortage data, as I'm sure you're all feeling, that the labor shortage, there's not the same kids that grew up on a farm looking for the summer job. There just isn't as many of them, and it's harder to find people with that background and that previous farm experience. So is it really required, or are there ways to look at people that have different backgrounds and different experience, transferable skills that may be able to really fit in well with the job that you're hiring for? And you're not left alone as far as developing these job descriptions. CARC has developed job descriptions for a number of commodity groups, as well as a number of positions within those commodity groups. These are available on our website as well as through the Agri-HR Toolkit. And you can go in and take these templates. It'll give you a good idea of what goes into a full detailed job description, as well as the type of descriptions around responsibilities, competencies, that type of thing. Ways to describe your working conditions. These are Word documents, so you're able to take them, customize them for your own operation, and at least it gives you a starting place as you develop these job descriptions. The next thing that, you know your job description, you know what you're looking for, how do you go out and find that person? So you need to give some thought to what recruitment methods are going to work best. I will say that there's not just one method. You are going to want to use multiple channels to get your information out, to get your ad out, and to spread the word that you're looking to hire. Some of those methods could be internal. So, you may have someone working with you that has worked with you for a while that may be ready to move up. And this can apply even to seasonal workers. You may have a seasonal worker that has been with you for the past 3 seasons, has developed really well at that entry level, and maybe is coming back this season, and you could identify them as someone that may be able to move up into a supervisory role or to take on more responsibility. So taking a look at your current team, even if they're just returning for the season, is a great place to start. As is employee referrals. Most employees are not going to refer someone to come work with them if they don't believe that they would be a good asset or a good addition to the team. And so asking your employees, do you know anyone else that would be interested in working here? Again, a good place to look for recruiting. Networking and word of mouth, obviously very good as well. Sharing information with your neighbors, with your community. And with COVID, we may not be out as much at the normal places we would run into people, but certainly using social media and Twitter, local Facebook pages, anything like that to get the word out about your hiring is a great thing to do as well. Ads, also a very good thing to do. We'll go through some good places to post those ads and ways to develop the ads as well. And recruitment agencies can be used as well. They will cost you some money, but depending on the number of people you're hiring, the time that you have to manage that process, they can be a good asset as well. But as I said, you're really going to look at a combination of all of these types of methods. And, I'm sure there's others not listed here as well. So as I mentioned, you do want to look at places to post those job ads. There's the nsagjobs.ca, which is a good place to start. There's also more general job boards that you could look at that may be good places as well. You don't want to forget about your local employment office or your local newspaper or online classified ads, Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace. Those places as well are really good channels to get your job ad out and to get the word out. If you're looking for a specific technical background, you may also want to look at an association for that profession or for that training. They may have good job boards for you as well. Post-secondary institutions are a great place to look as well, especially for the seasonal work. A lot of them have co-op positions that they're looking to connect students with, but they also have job boards for students that are looking for summer work. So I highly recommend that you do connect with your post-secondary institutions to get that information out and to get your job out to connect with the students as well. High schools, again, for those seasonal jobs are a great place as well, and making sure that you're sharing the information with the career development classes, but as well as with their guidance counselors, or if they have summer job posting board or a way to share that information with students. It's a good way to find students looking for summer work. So how do you create that job ad? Now we know what you need for the job description. We know where you're going to look, but how do you create that job ad that's going to have people want to apply? You do want to make sure that you're providing enough detail in the ad that shares enough information that someone looking at it gets an idea of what it would be like to work for you and in your operation, as well as what they'd be doing day to day and what to expect. Certainly lots of job ads out there that I've seen and that I think we've all seen, where it's just as basic of, farm worker, hiring farm worker, here's my number, call me. You may get calls, but you might not get the right people. And by just taking a little bit of time to put a quality job ad together, again, it may be the first time that someone is coming across your operation. They're going to get a good sense that you run your operation as a business and that you care about the people that are coming to work for you, and that you've taken the time to provide information about yourself and about the job so that they have something to base their decision of if they're going to apply or not. You do want to highlight things that are unique and interesting about your operation, while striking that balance between creating an exciting opportunity, exciting ad, and that realistic opportunity. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Also, it's very important that you're using inclusive language. That does go back to some of the legislation around human rights, but it also is important so that you're showing that you are an operation that is looking to hire people in a very inclusive way, and taking a look at some of the inclusive language that you can use in your job description as well as your job ad is very important to do before you get that job out. And it can be things around using general gender neutral terminology, using language that refers to the person and not to their disability. Things like that are important to think about when you are putting the job ads together. As well, if you're using any photos or anything like that within if you have a website for your operation, or if you're, have anything like marketing materials or anything like that, you want to make sure that those, that you're showing an inclusive workforce within the materials that you're putting out as well. The other thing that's important that you may not be thinking about is really providing a bit of a farm profile, so that there's a real picture of what it's like to work on your farm, what type of commodities you have, what you value, and why your farm is a good place to work. Again, this gives a good picture to possible applicants and gives them a reason why they want to come and work for you as well. You want to make sure that you're talking about things like what commodities you have, as I mentioned. It does show that you're working, that you operate your farm as a business, and that may differentiate you from other farms that are hiring in the area or other employers that are hiring in the area. And it can be a really good recruitment tool as well. So what does a farm profile look like? Here's an example that actually comes from Newfoundland, but it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be super descriptive. It just gives a good idea of what your farm is all about. So in this one, you see it provides a location, it provides when it was established, so you know the history of the operation, you know the size by saying that it's the second largest dairy operation and how many cows are being milked. But it also provides a little insight into the workplace culture and the way that they approach their business around focusing on quality, high quality milk, an environment that, you know, is well-being for our cows, that committed to employees and competitive pay. Again, not a long, lengthy description, but enough to give you a picture of what it would be like to work there. Another example that I've pulled from a farm operation hiring in the Ottawa area, and this is something that they had on their website. This goes a little bit longer than what would be in a job posting or a job ad, but if you have this on a website or on your Facebook page, it provides a resource to people that may be looking up your farm to get a better idea. So again, you know, they're hiring harvest hand positions, a seasonal job. They give it a bit of a description about where they're located so that it's clear. You need a driver's license. The bus is not going to bring you out to our farm to work. So that's, you know, that's a fact, and it's just presented in a way that gives the possible applicant some information about what they need to think about to get to work. Talks about the types of crops that they grow. They go into a bit of just a short description on what the season looks like, what a typical workday looks like, and how that varies between the different crops that are being harvested. Again, you know, strawberries, picking starts at 6 a.m., rain or shine. And, you know, things like that are going to give a good picture to a job seeker on what it would be like for them to come into that world. And then they provide a bit of a description of a typical work week. I know, you know, there's been many examples of hiring people that may not have farm experience, or hiring younger workers that are expecting to have the weekend off. By providing this information up front in a very factual way, does set the expectation before someone applies, and will help avoid those surprises of like hiring someone and then them wondering why they can't leave at 5, or wondering why they can't have the weekend off. You've set that expectation up front before they've applied. Also, they've gone and provided just a short description on what it's like to do the various jobs. So again, setting the expectation of what it is like. When you're picking berries, you're going to be low to the ground, you're going to be in a crouched position. You're going to work on paid by piecework. So again, a good description of what it would be like to work in the role and how that varies between the commodities or the crops that they're picking. So that just gives you a little bit more picture on that job ad and things to think about to ensure that you're getting the right information out, that you're presenting your farm and the opportunity in a way that is going to connect with the right people. So the next thing, now that your job ads out, you're having resumes come in. And so how do you select the right candidate or candidates from the resumes that are coming in? Selection really is that process of choosing the qualified candidates from all the applications that you have. And you want to make sure that this process is set up before the resumes start coming in, so that you have a standard way of reviewing the resumes and a standard way of evaluating the resumes and the applicants. The types of selection methods that you will be using once you decide who you're going to interview is that interview. You can ask for a work sample. That really depends on the type of job that you're hiring for. References are very important. Again, depending on the type of job you're looking for, you may have a written test. You might have a basket exercise which can help show how they prioritize things or problem solve, depending on the level of the job, an oral presentation, or personality or aptitude tests. There's lots of different ways to understand if a candidate is qualified. But things to consider when you are looking for employees, as I mentioned before, you may not be finding enough candidates that are coming from that ideal background, that have done the work before and that can just start and fit in perfectly with your operation. So you need to start thinking even beforehand through that HR planning process about other sectors and people working in other sectors that may have really good transferable skills that would fit into your farm. And what are the type of skills that are really important and the knowledge and experience that they have to be successful, and what are the things that you can train, knowing especially if they've worked in another industry or have those transferable skills. Also, being open to looking for employees from those non-traditional groups, as I've mentioned, newcomers to Canada, retirees, persons with disabilities, groups that you may not have typically gone and looked for and promoted your jobs to, will help expand the applicant pool and will really open up opportunities to bringing people into the jobs that you have open, and potentially bringing some new ideas and new ways of doing things as well. So the selection process, we will go through the process of preparing for the interview, but taking time to prepare through these steps will help you identify the right person or people, and it will help reduce your turnover rate. 80% of turnover is a result of hiring the wrong person. So by, you've done all of the steps so far to get the job ad to the right people, now it's taking the time to make sure you're prepared for the interview and that you're able to select from the candidates that you have coming in. So you want to make sure that you know what that hiring process is going to look like, whether you have applications and an application form that people are filling out, or if they're just sending resumes in, making sure you're prepared for the interview and using the job requirements that you have set in your job description that you shared in your job ad as the things you're evaluating against when you're doing the interviews. If you are using an application process, again, you want to make sure that you're asking questions on that form that are requirements to the job and that are not asking for information that is discriminatory or prohibited. Things around education, work experience, and references are directly applicable to the job and can be asked on the form. Other things that you want to be thinking about is making sure that you're prepared, that you have standard questions that are tied to the job requirements, that you have a rating method to evaluate the responses to the standard questions that you're asking. And when you can, making sure there's consistency in who the interview team is, whether it's yourself and someone else, which is a good thing to do because you have two people's assessments of the candidate. Making sure that as much as possible that the people interviewing are consistent through the applicant interview process. As well, during the interview, you want to be using the interview time and that time with the person to see if they're a really good match for the job requirements. So again, being prepared and having questions related to what the job requirements are is going to help. Also, providing a realistic job preview is good because you get an idea if the person is suited for the type of work that's being done. And sometimes that can be giving a tour of a barn. Certainly had some examples of dairy farmers hiring for milking and having, bringing out the candidates, showing them the milking, the parlor, and, when you have a good feel for the candidate, maybe having them do a little bit of milking or that kind of thing. So there's different things that you can do to give that realistic job preview. You can also have candidates connect with people that have worked in the job in the past or your current employees that have done that work and have them, connect and ask questions about what it's really like again, just giving good information, setting those expectations, and sharing, what it's really like to work in the role should help reduce your turnover and should also help make sure you're hiring the right people for your operation. Those interview questions, as I mentioned, should be done with a set list of questions so that you can determine the right person for the job. And again, you're not left alone on trying to come up with those questions or think about how you're going to do that interview. On the Agra Jobs portion of our website, as well as through the Agra HR Toolkit, you have access to these interview guides. Again, they're Word documents. They are organized by commodity group and by the type or level of worker that you're looking to hire, and can easily be customized to your operation and to the job that you're hiring for. So don't feel left alone. Make sure that you reach out and use the tools that are there for you. We talked about that realistic job preview already, different ways that you can do it. Sometimes it's going to be having them come to the farm. With COVID, sometimes that may not be as possible, or with biosecurity concerns. So you'll need to think about the best way to share that job preview. But definitely something that is an important step in that hiring process, because really, especially with the labor shortage, it's not necessarily that you're just interviewing the person to work for you. They're also interviewing you as, is this a place I want to work? So taking the time to show them what it's like and that you care, that they understand about the job before they're in it, will really help as well. It's also very important that you're taking the time to do that reference check. So the process helps you verify that the information they've provided is factual, that you assess their abilities and skills, but it's also a really good way to identify things that you're going to hire this person, but now you've heard a few things that you might need to take a little extra time on for training or for onboarding. It's just a good way to get a better sense of the person that you're hiring and what they're going to need as well. The next thing, once you've done your reference checks, you know who you're going to hire, it's really important to go through the proper process to hire the person, prepare a letter of offer. This definitely also includes for seasonal workers, making sure you extend that offer and that you contact unsuccessful candidates. So what I will say is that it's good to be aware that if you give a verbal job offer to someone, that is legally binding. So you want to be thinking about what you're saying to someone, to a candidate, because once it's out there verbally, it is legally binding. But within that job offer letter, you can also share information around the expectations, the compensation, if it's a seasonal job, that it is seasonal, when you expect it to end, that type of thing. Again, the Agra HR Toolkit has templates for offer letters, also has templates to communicate with unsuccessful candidates, which is very important. Taking the time to do that is going to show you valued their interest in your operation. It's going to show that that you valued their time as well. And again, it just goes to helping build your reputation as being an employer of choice, or someone that really cares about the people involved in or that are applying to work for you. I'm not going to go too much into detail on this. We're going to talk about this in more detail, I believe, in the next webinar. But it is also important, once you do hire someone, to do that onboarding and making sure that on their first day they know who's who. You're making introductions, they have access to the right information, where to find information, who to ask questions to, that they have that health and safety training, and any other training related to your operation. Even with someone that's coming from a similar background, your operation is different than anyone else's. So there may be similarities, but it's important that you take the time and don't make assumptions about what the person knows. Take the time to train them in how things are done in your operation. You also want to make sure that you're checking in, that they're not just left on their own, and that check-in may be more frequent at the beginning and not as frequent as time goes on. As I've mentioned throughout, we do have the Agri-HR toolkit. Within that toolkit is all the tools and resources and information that you need for HR management in all aspects of it, right from recruitment, selection, and hiring, which we've talked about today, through to things that are going to help you with retention by looking at compensation, performance, succession planning, policies that you need in place, health and safety, wellness, diversity, and inclusion. There's also a section on foreign workers as well and the process to follow for that. So as a member of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture and as one of our valued partners, you do have free access to the Agri-HR toolkit. You go to the link, you click on the subscribe now, you click on buy now, and then it will take you to the page where you can put in the discount code, which is NSFA Toolkit. Once you put that code in, you will have free access to the Agri-HR Toolkit for the year. You will not need to go back and do this step every time. You'll just be able to log in and use it for the year without having to do that again. So that's it from me. As far as the formal presentation goes, I'm not sure if there's any questions or any points for discussion or clarification.